As we're dealing with breaking news tonight over several cases involving Donald Trump, the question at the center of it all: should presidents have absolute immunity? That is what Trump is asking the Supreme Court to consider tomorrow in a blockbuster hearing that'll carry some major consequences for his election and beyond. Former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney is now urging the justices to act and to act quickly. She says, quote, "If delay prevents this Trump case from being tried this year, the public may never hear critical and historic evidence developed before the grand jury, and our system may never hold the man most responsible for January 6th to account." Joining me now is Donald Trump's former National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
You heard Liz Cheney's message in that op-ed. She wants the justices to really view time as being of the essence here, because if they don't rule quickly, the American people won't have the benefit of hearing the evidence in this case. Is she right?
I think she's exactly right. In fact, the briefing schedule the court set was kind of disappointing. I think they could have moved this more quickly. They have in comparable circumstances. So I do think speed in coming to their conclusion is going to be very important. Obviously, the substance of it's going to be very important, but I think for the country as a whole, it would benefit from them making this their top priority for the rest of the term.
Do you agree with her assessment that it's likely that most of the justices perhaps will say that this idea of blanket immunity is nonsense? And if so, is it even justifiable that they didn't just issue an earlier ruling on this subject?
Well, I think the court has to opine itself. I don't think it could rely simply on a court of appeals opinion. But I think rejecting Trump's extreme argument that he has total immunity for everything doesn't mean that no president has immunity for anything. It's more complicated, except in this case, if you read the indictment, none of the acts alleged by President Trump were presidential acts. They were acts of a presidential candidate,
sure,
which he's entitled to do up until the point where he crosses the line. And I think if the court accepts that as their approach to the decision, it could come pretty quickly.
So speaking of alleged acts, in two states just today, Michigan and Arizona, Trump is an unindicted co-conspirator, while his associates have been charged in the fake electors plot. What do you make of that? I mean, it's so extraordinary that we're sitting here talking about a former president on trial in New York City, and then also an unindicted co-conspirator twice in one day.
Well, I think in each state, they have to determine on the facts they're alleging about the Electoral College plot whether they have the evidence to convict Trump. I mean, I think before lawfare gets out of hand, you ought to remember what the principal purpose is, which is to bring charges against people that you think you can prove guilt for beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they don't have the evidence, they don't want to charge him and see him acquitted. I mean, if the political objective is not have him elected to a second term as president, feeding into his narrative that he's persecuted isn't helpful.
I mean, he was not charged, but I mean, what does it say that he is even part of the plot?
Well, I think he had to be part of the plot if there's any plot at all. But again, their decision, we don't know what the grounds for not indicting him were, but it could well be they simply don't think they have enough evidence on him as opposed to the other defendants.
So that hush money trial in New York is ongoing, and obviously lots of opinions about the substance of the trial, but Trump's behavior leading up to it and around the trial is the subject of a lot of controversy, including a ruling that we're expecting from the judge in that case as well. He's under a gag order, and he keeps allegedly violating it. The choice for the judge now is monetary penalties or jail. Should jail be on the table?
Well, I think what I would do, I thought of this some time back. I don't know New York practice, but I've heard other people suggest it, so I'd like to endorse it. If I were the judge, I'd find him in contempt for some or all of the particulars that the prosecutors have brought, but I would withhold the penalty until after the jury verdict. That puts him on notice that the penalty could be severe and may have a greater in terrorem effect against Trump for the rest of the trial than if they actually started imposing the penalties. And again, I think the courts should not allow themselves to be played by Donald Trump. He knows that he generates sympathy for himself if he shows he's just poor, picked on Donald Trump. Court shouldn't let him win that game.
How so?
Well, I think that is what he's trying to do, is politicize the court. And I think the response could come by a judicial posture that they're going to hold him in contempt but not not impose the penalty until they see what the jury verdict
But I mean, would a
is.
jail penalty, whether it comes now or later, I mean, some would argue that's what Trump really wants.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I mean, I don't want to see Trump reelected. So let's keep our eyes on the prize, in a favorite phrase of Jim Baker's that he always used to tell me. If the prize is keeping him from being elected, don't let Trump derangement syndrome lead you down a path of lawfare that'll help him get elected.
I want to turn to foreign policy now. We're learning that the Biden administration actually quietly delivered long-range weapons to Ukraine earlier this month, despite months and months of delays on that very question. There's more aid coming in that package that was just passed and signed by President Biden. But is it enough at this stage to help Ukraine regain the momentum? Can this war, in your mind, still be won?
Well, I think it can be, but look, we've had 2 years of strategic failure by the United States and NATO, 2 years of endless debate. Do we provide javelins? Do we provide ATACMS? Do we provide Abrams tanks? Do we provide M16s? That's not a strategic way to fight a war. And now we've got gridlock and actually some Russian advances because of that. It's an excuse used by some Republicans not to vote for the most recent aid package. My answer to that is, just because you have an incompetent White House, which is how I judge their performance in Ukraine, is no reason to give up on basic American national security interest in
What
Ukraine.
about the role of those Republicans? I mean, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, he delayed and delayed on getting this Ukraine aid to a vote. He, not so long ago, said this should be secondary to dealing with the border, as if Congress can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Does he bear some responsibility for this delay?
Well, I think he produced the right result. You know, when he became Speaker, I don't think any sizable number of Republicans in the House Republican caucus would have said he's the next Speaker of the House. He had a lot to learn, and it took some time, that's true. But he did learn it.
But Ukraine didn't have that kind of time.
And, well, in part because of 2 years of inept policy by the White House. But when the crunch came, Johnson put his job on the line. And to me, that's the real test in Washington.
In a recent interview, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she believes that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should resign because of his opposition to a two-state solution. That's a view that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer also endorses. You've dealt with Netanyahu. You've seen his conduct in this war. What do you say?
Well, I'm delighted on the one hand that Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have adopted regime change as an element of American foreign policy. It's too bad they've got the wrong regime. They should be focused on the regime in Tehran, not the one in Jerusalem. Look, the Israeli War Cabinet has in it one of the leaders of the opposition, Benny Gantz, who wants to be prime minister, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, who also wants to be prime minister. It's not like Bibi Netanyahu has a free hand, even within the limits of the war cabinet. So I'm sure that the Schumer-Pelosi political advice is well received in some parts of Israel. I personally think it strengthens Netanyahu.
You think Netanyahu's doing a good job?
I think it's a mixed performance under very difficult circumstances. There will be a reckoning for the intelligence failure on October the 7th, as there was for Golda Meir after the Yom Kippur War. Right now, they've still got a lot of work to do to win the war.